I hadn't set foot in the Reyes house for 9 years. The front door still stuck halfway the way it did when I was a kid, forcing you to lift and shove like the house was testing your strength. Inside, cinnamon candles battled the smell of roast beef. Balloons spelled out Harlan. 68 in sloppy gold letters, a birthday, not a war. Or so it seemed. We started normal. Paper crowns, bad coffee. My mom Elena fussed with the table runner like it could solve our history. My father cleared his throat 3 times, the old signal that everyone should listen. I touched the thin silver bracelet on my wrist. It hummed against my pulse. I told myself to breathe. Family, Dad said, raising a glass. It's time to talk about the future of Reyes Tool and Forge. No one blinked. We grew up trained for speeches. Victor sat taller, 38 now, jaw tight like Dad's. Silas, 35, rolled his shoulders like a boxer warming up. Mom stared at the roast and pretended it was a sunrise. I took the end seat no one had claimed, the chair that usually held coats. After careful consideration, Dad said, I'm naming Victor CEO when I step back at the end of the year. Silas will serve as COO. His eyes never reached me. Ownership transfers equally to them. Our legacy continues through my sons. There it was, the word our that never included me. Cutlery paused. Conversation died. My throat didn't. It felt clear in a way that shocked me. Years ago, I would have tried to explain to Shrink to win him with facts. Today, I straightened my napkin and said nothing. I let the moment sit like a stone dropped into a lake. Let the ripples show themselves. And Juno Mom whispered, finally brave enough to enter the sentence. Her voice barely made it over the candles. Juno has her own life. Dad reached for the carving knife. Computers, apps, that tech stuff. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. The message was muscle memory. I met his profile like it was a stranger's. Thank you for being clear, I said. It came out calm, not icy, not sweet, just even. He flinched anyway. Control hates clarity. I scanned the room. Framed photos crowded the walls, Victor breaking ground on the new warehouse, Silas shaking hands with the mayor, Dad in a hard hat chin-up. When I left, they replaced my childhood picture with a shot of a company picnic. I know because Aunt Lydia slipped and told me at a funeral. She's 62, the only one who ever called me to ask how I really was. That makes her dangerous here at the validator, though. I didn't have words for it back then. We ate in silence for a while. Plates clinked. Somewhere a faucet dripped like a metronome, keeping time with my heart. Juno, Dad said, suddenly carving meat with short, decisive strokes. There's still time for you. You could marry someone with sense. Settle down. You're 33 now. It's not too late to make a proper home. Mom's hand twitched. She smoothed her napkin until the hem curled. I studied the grooves in the table. My palms felt steady. A proper home is wherever I'm not minimized, Dad. Victor exhaled a laugh that wasn't a laugh. Silas found a spot on the wall and stared through it. Their silence said more than their mouths ever did. 9 years ago, I told this family I wanted to build software for power grids. I believed we could stop blackouts before they started. Dad called it a phase like acne. Victor told me I should join his sales team to learn real business. Silas sent me a link to job openings at the plant. I left that night with a duffel of car that needed a prayer and a stubborn idea. 3 part-time jobs and a dozen rejections later, Gridloom was a website with 2 paying pilots and my name on the lease. I didn't come back for weddings, or births, or Mom's back surgery. Cut me for long enough and I learned to bleed somewhere else. Anyway, Dad went on, we'll draw up the papers next week. He slid the knife into the roast like he was signing something. It's better this way. You're creative. The boys are practical. I kept chewing, slow, deliberate. His words landed and slid off like rain on waxed canvas. I let him think he'd finished the chapter. People like him love tidy endings. A small cough came from my left, Max 13. Silas's kid pushed peas around his plate. He's the only one who texts me memes at midnight and doesn't ask for anything. The innocent. Aunt Juno, he said, voice cracking at the edges. Is Gridloom the thing where, like, the power company listens to your thing and you tell them where it breaks before it breaks? I smiled at something like that. Victor's fork stilled. You doing contracts with utilities now? Victor, Mom warned too late. Curiosity is a spark in a factory full of fumes. Dad sighed like the conversation bored him. None of that matters here. This is a manufacturing family. It used to be. It also used to be 97 forever in this house. From the doorway, Aunt Lydia cleared her throat, too casual to be casual. Har, she said to Dad, the courier's here. Something from Greer and Phelps, the estate attorneys. She set a thick envelope by his plate and didn't quite meet my eyes. A breadcrumb dropped on purpose. I tucked it away. Dad's jaw flexed. He slid the envelope away with the back of his hand, later. I reached for water and caught my reflection in the pitcher. I looked like my mother and someone she might admire. Clean lines, eyes that didn't dart for permission. My bracelet warmed against my skin. Inside my pocket, my phone recorded the room from the moment I'd walked in. Old habit, new boundary. I wasn't going to argue with anyone's memory again. Since we're sharing news, Dad said Victor and Silas have been talking with Hensley Steel about a joint venture. Expansion's coming. This is why we need a stable front. He meant not you. He always meant that. Congrats, I said. I hope you've done due diligence on their debt. Silas blinked. What debt? Silas, Victor said under his breath. I kept my face empty. Let that breadcrumb roll to the floor like it didn't matter. The funny thing about being underestimated is how often people hand you the rope. They think you'll use it to climb down. I learned to measure knots. Mom poured coffee with a tremor. Juno, sweetheart, how's San Francisco? She said the city like it was a phase, too. Sonny, I said, loud, too many scooters. A few chuckles, a release valve, then tension crept back in fog under a door. Do you still... Code, Victor asked, like he was asking if I still played with dolls. Every morning. I held his gaze. I like solving things. Dad waved the topic away with the knife. Hobby talk later. Let's focus on the company. He raised his glass again. To Reyes Tool and Forge. To my sons who'll carry it forward. Glasses lifted, mine stayed down. To truth, I said quietly. The word hung there, a different kind of toast. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted a chair. The chandelier hummed. My phone kept recording. That was the ordinary moment collapsing. The shock didn't come from Dad's announcement. I expected his script years ago. The shock was how little it rattled me. The life-saving decision was this: I wouldn't try to win them over. Not this time, not with facts, not with patience. I would let events speak in a language my father actually respected outcomes. Max's tablet chimed on the table. A bright, obnoxious ping cut through the room. He fumbled, almost dropping it. Sorry, he murmured, face flushing. Then his eyes widened. Whoa, Max Silas warned. He stared at the screen like it grew teeth. Dad? Grandpa, you should see this. Every head turned. Dad muttered about devices at dinner, but Max was already sliding the tablet to the center palm's sweaty courage, shaky, but real. I didn't lean in. I'd already seen what the world was saying. I'd made peace with what it would do to this house. But I watched their faces as the headline came into focus, eyes widening, forks hovering, Mom's lips parting like a door unlatched for the first time. And that more than anything told me we were finally speaking the same language. I didn't say a word, not yet. Let the room read. Let the story rewrite itself without my mouth trying to steer it. Power shifts best when no one sees the hand. Outside, the wind pushed against the old maple and rattled a string of birthday balloons. Inside, silence gathered like a storm about to break. I lifted my glass at last, not to toast, but to steady my hand. Before anyone says anything, I said, voice low, I want you to listen. Then I tapped the bracelet at my wrist. It clicked once, a tiny sound easy to miss unless you were listening for it. The room went still enough to hear the clock in the hallway count 1, 2, 3, and the recording in my pocket kept running. The headline bled across Max's screen in loud electric blue. Gridloom wins national grid contract. Founder Juno Reyes tops Fortune 40 under 40. Valuation hits 6.4 B. Silas's wineglass stopped midair. Victor's mouth opened, then shut. Mom pressed 2 fingers to her necklace like it might steady the room. Dad stared a second too long, as if sheer will could change the words. Living room, now, he said. We migrated like weather. The portraits followed us with their perfect frames. Dad stayed standing. He always did. It made everyone else look like they were receiving instructions. How long were you planning to keep this from us, he asked. No pride, just an indictment. I didn't keep anything I said. We announced the contract 2 months ago. We mailed a letter the day it closed. To me, he sounded genuinely confused. To the house. I glanced at Aunt Lydia. She lifted her chin the smallest bit. The validator steady as ever. Courier dropped an envelope earlier, she said. From Greer and Phelps. Looked formal. Dad dismissed her with a flick of his hand, then recovered his poise. Juno Tech valuations are smoke. They rise and pop. This won't last. Maybe, I said. Or maybe we've been profitable since year 3 and you didn't notice. Victor found his voice. We always knew you were capable. Remember when I told you to leverage crowd sentiment scoring for outage prediction? You told me to build a weather app, I said. Silas leaned forward, elbows on knees. Hensley's CFO says AI is a buzzword. We're not impressed. Hensley's debt to equity is 3.7, I said. They're selling receivables to float payroll. If you tie Reyes to that, you'll drown together. Silas blinked. Victor shifted. Dad's jaw clicked twice. Mom perched on the arm of a chair like it might buck her off. I should have called when I saw your name on the magazine, she whispered. Your father was... Upset, I thought it would blow over. There it was, the old mechanism. Keep peace. Preserve his comfort. Spend mine. I opened my mouth to answer, but the kitchen phone rang. Twice, 3 times. Rosa, our housekeeper, rushed in with the cordless. Mr. Reyes, she panted. A reporter asks for comment about the advice you gave your daughter on risk math. Silence thickened. Dad's eyes flicked to me, then back to Rosa. Tell them I'll return the call, he said. Advice, I repeated. He planted his feet. I told your uncle years ago you needed discipline. I told you to think bigger. You told me to marry someone sensible, I said, and to stop playing with computers. Aunt Lydia's voice cut soft and precise. You told me you burned Juno's scholarship letter. I found the ashes in the grill. Stop pretending you mentored her. The room tilted. Mom gasped. Victor swore under his breath. Silas looked like he wanted to leave his own skin. Dad glared at his sister. You misremember. I tapped my bracelet. We can play the recording from dinner if anyone's memory needs help. He went still. I watched the calculation move behind his eyes. Control hates tape. My phone buzzed. Calla, breathe. In through your nose 4 counts. Out 6. You don't need them to agree for it to be true. Calla. My anchor. She'd been with me in the apartment with no curtains, and a server humming on a plastic shelf the winter our code kept crashing at 2 a.m. She once pawned her vintage bike to make payroll. She never asked me to be smaller. I typed back under my palm. I'm okay, it's loud here, even when it's quiet. Another buzz. Calla, reminder, you don't have to win, you just have to stay honest. Dad cleared his throat. No more theatrics. If you'd told me sooner, we could have coordinated. Reyes and daughter has a ring to it. Mom flinched at the word daughter like it might bite if handled wrong. Greer and Phelps, I said, nodding to the envelope on the credenza. What's in it? Routine, Dad replied. Open it, Aunt Lydia said. He hesitated. Then he tore the flap and slid out crisp pages. His eyes scanned. The color drained and then returned in an angry flush. I held out my hand. He didn't move. So I stepped forward and plucked the top page. The clause was easy to find. They had put it in bold. Any child not employed by Reyes Tool and Forge by December 31st of the calendar year shall be deemed to have abandoned interest. Assets transfer to Victor and Silas Reyes in equal share. I read it aloud. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't either. Mom put both palms flat on her knees. Harlan, she whispered, you said it was temporary. It was prudent, he snapped. To force focus. Force obedience, I said. Silas rose like he might argue, then he sank back down. Victor stared at the carpet and counted its stitches. Why didn't you tell me Mom asked him again smaller now, not weak, drained? You agreed, Dad said. She looked up and I saw something I had not seen since I was 10, and she stepped between me and a swinging cabinet door. No, she said quietly. I obeyed. The edge in her voice cut the room in a new shape. Max lingered in the doorway, eyes wide. The innocent soaking up adult weather he shouldn't have to name. I smiled at him, a quick, private thing. He sat on the step and pretended he couldn't hear. Enough. Dad put the papers back in the envelope as if hiding them could undo print. We can fix this by Monday. The board will love Reyes and daughter. Your face brings investors. We'll announce a joint task force. You'll advise. You don't want my mind, I said. You want the sticker. He exhaled through his nose. You're emotional. I laughed once. Not cruel, true. Let me tell you about emotional, I said. There was a night in Laredo when a substation ran hot. 2 linemen were on a lift. My model flagged the surge 90 seconds before the readouts caught up. They came down. The transformer blew. Later, one of them wrote me a letter about his kid's baseball game. I keep it in my wallet. That's why I built Gridloom. Not to be your sticker. No one spoke. The clock filled the quiet. Mom's voice found a thread. Juno, she said, I didn't send your first Christmas card back. I put it in a drawer. He said you would come home if we didn't feed the nonsense. It wasn't nonsense, I said. The words were simple. The grief behind them wasn't. The front door rattled. Cousin Danny blew in with cold air and a phone held aloft. The revealer loud without trying. Aunt Elena, you will not believe it, she said, then stopped when she saw our faces. Her eyes bounced to me. Oh. You already know the internet exploded. Grandpa Harlan told Facebook he taught you everything you know about risk math. He used a graph emoji. A sound escaped Victor that might have been a laugh or a cough. Silas hid a smile and then thought better of it. Dad's cheeks reddened. Delete that post, he ordered. I can't delete your Facebook, Danny said. Also, the comments are spicy. I sat back. Let the weight of what I could do settle in my body. I could play the recording, I could call a lawyer, I could leave and never return. Each path had a cost. Each path had a freedom. My bracelet warmed again. A tiny pulse against skin. Stay present, choose clean. Here's my boundary, I said. I won't be erased again. I also won't be absorbed to salvage your image. I'm happy to help our town. I'll mentor kids, I'll sit on a school advisory board, I'll even walk the plant and suggest upgrades if you ask me as a professional, not as a trophy. Dad opened his mouth. I lifted a hand. There's more. Before anyone makes another move, we need to talk about Hensley. And about the way you've handled safety. Silas frowned. Safety? I nodded. 3 near misses in Q2. 2 not logged. One whistleblower already emailed my general inbox because he couldn't get through to your HR without retaliation. Victor went pale. Mom looked like she might be sick. Aunt Lydia closed her eyes for a beat, then stood straighter. Dad fixed me with the look he used on vendors who tried to add fees. You don't understand how manufacturing works. I wrote a predictive model for bearing failure when I was 19, I said. I understand friction. He stared. A beat, then another. Somewhere a dog barked down the block as if to say, keep going. I let the silence hold until it ripened into discomfort. Then I reached into my bag and slid a slim folder across the coffee table. This is a pro bono audit, I said. From my team. Public sources, OSHA filings, satellite thermal. If you want help, ask for it. If you don't, at least stop telling people you taught me risk math. Max's voice piped from the doorway, careful, almost reverent. Aunt Juno. Yes, buddy. Can I show you my science project later? My throat tightened. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. The room softened for a breath, then hardened again. Dad looked at the envelope, at the audit, at me. He was still the manipulator, but something in his eyes had shifted from disdain to calculation with a margin for loss. He was tallying a new variable, the cost of pretending versus the cost of listening. Tomorrow, he said at last, we'll reconvene. Family only. Not just family, I said. Bring your plant manager and your safety officer. If you don't, I walk and I don't come back. Aunt Lydia's mouth curved. Not a smile, approval. The validator stamped my passport into a new country. Mom stood slow but sure. I'll make coffee, she said, and the words sounded like a peace treaty signed on a kitchen table. I rose too. The evening needed air. I stepped into the hall, then the kitchen. I braced my hands on the counter, breathing like Kala taught me. 4 in, 6 out. The window over the sink framed the dark yard, the old maple tossing its thin arms. The balloons on the porch knocked together like clumsy dancers. My phone buzzed again. Kala? How's the weather in there? Changing, I typed. Barometer falling. Kala, proud of you. Also reminder, you don't owe them a performance. You owe yourself rest. I filled a glass. The water ran cold and honest. Behind me, footsteps. Mom stood in the doorway, twisting her ring. He will fight you, she said. He fights everything that isn't his idea. I know. But he heard you, she said like she was surprising herself. I saw it. I nodded. Mom, did you keep anything of mine? She understood without a sentence, but no. She reached into a drawer by the fridge and pulled out a rubber-banded stack of envelopes. My handwriting. The little stickers I used when I was poor and earnest. I couldn't mail them back, she whispered. I also couldn't send them. I'm sorry. I took the stack. They were heavier than paper. Thank you, I said. We stood there a moment, a new shape forming where old ones cracked. In the living room, Dad called my name. His voice had lost a layer of iron. Juno. I put the letters back in the drawer for now. Coming, I said. As I crossed the threshold, I thought of the bears in my code and the bearings at the plant, of Max's project and Danny's post, of the clause in bold and the letter from Laredo folded twice in my wallet. The game board had tilted, but the pieces were still the same. I wasn't going to flip it. I was going to play better. Tomorrow at 9, I said, meeting Dad's eyes. We start with safety, then we talk legacy. He nodded once. 9. We held each other's gaze steady, not warm, not cold, exact always. And in that exactness, I felt the ground shift again, just a little toward something that could someday hold. At 8:59 the next morning, I walked into the conference room like it was a lab. Bright light, long table, coffee that tasted like history. Dad sat at the head. Victor and Silas flanked him stiff in new blazers. Mom took the chair by the window, a legal pad in front of her, as if taking notes could make this safer. Aunt Lydia slid in beside me and set down a tin of mints like armor. Ria Torres, the plant manager, arrived with a stack of binders. 50 sharp eyes greased still at the cuticles. The kind of competent men like my father claim they can't find and then ignore when she's in the room. Behind her came Kendrick Patel, safety officer 29, an anxious tie too tight. I opened my folder. We start with facts, I said. Dad gave me a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. By all means. I clicked my laptop. A graph filled the screen. Dull lines, living consequences. These are heat signatures from the forge line for the last 12 months, I said. Pulled from publicly available satellite data. Normal looks like this, I pointed. Your plant looks like this. I pointed again where the line spiked like a heartbeat in a panic. Ria leaned forward. We had a fan go down in July. The spike started in May, I said. The fan failure made it worse. It didn't cause it. Kendrick swallowed. We logged the fan he offered, voice small. I nodded. I saw the log. I also saw 3 temperature alarms that never got escalated. Same shift, same supervisor. Silas shifted. Coincidence. Ria's jaw set. Dixon, she said, naming the supervisor. Not a question, not a denial. I clicked to the next slide. Here are overtime records. Here are maintenance logs. Here are purchase orders for replacement bearings you didn't buy. Victor sat up. Where did you get those public filings, vendor reports, things companies forget are visible when they assume no one is looking? Dad steepled his fingers. Juno, you're making a mountain of noise. Noise turns to fire if you ignore it long enough, I said. The funny thing is, your own numbers tell the story. Throughput up. Downtime. Down. Energy consumption rising like a fever. That pattern means someone got clever with interlocks. It also means you're playing roulette with people's lives. Mom let out a breath she'd been holding. Ria didn't look away. I asked for a shutdown day in August, she said. I was overruled. By who, I asked. Ria's eyes moved toward Dad and then away, corporate. Kendrick fiddled with his pen. Sweat dotted his temple. I submitted a corrective action, he said. It got revised. I held his gaze. By who? He glanced at Victor, then at Silas, then at the floor. Legal? Victor lifted his hands. Hold on. We run a lean operation. That's not a sin. Leanness isn't the problem, I said. Blindness is. Dad's voice went flat. State your ask. Immediate audit by a third party, I said. Pause line 2 until the heat problem is fixed. Replace the bearings. Restore the interlocks. Retrain Dixon and cover his shifts while he shadows someone who respects lockout/tagout. And end talks with Hensley until you understand their debt covenants. Silas bristled. Hensley's a growth play. My phone buzzed. Kalachek UCC filings on Hensley. Blanket lean June of last year. Cross default tied to production volume. They'll squeeze any partner to hit numbers. I looked up. They pledged everything last June. Cross default triggers if output drops. If you tie yourself to them, you become the vehicle they use to drive through their obligations. You'll push your plant past safe to make their bank happy. Silas's mouth opened, then closed. Victor stared at Dad with a look that asked for instructions. Juno, Dad said, patient the way a surgeon is patient with a conscious patient. You don't sit on this board. I'm offering you a way not to bury a worker. We've never buried a worker, he snapped. The door clicked. Danny slipped in with a half-hearted knock phone in one hand, apology in her eyes. Sorry. Everyone's in the lobby asking if we're hiring. She saw the slide on the screen. The red spike. Oh, I gestured to a chair. Stay, I said, quietly. Ria cleared her throat. We've been bandaging equipment for 5 years, she said. We make do. We stretch. My people keep coming back because they have kids and mortgages. They trust me not to get them killed. Let us fix the line. Dad ignored her. Reyes and daughter goes public next month, he said. With Juno's profile, we can secure better terms, and then... No, I said. He looked offended. No, you don't get my name until the plant is safe. You don't get it at all, actually. You want advice, ask. You want a daughter sticker, go to Etsy. Aunt Lydia coughed into a smile. Mom pressed her lips together to hide one. Kendrick finally spoke up, voice gaining spine. We lost a grinder last month, he said. Not dead. 2 fingers. He didn't report because Dixon told him he'd lose his holiday shifts. Ria snapped her head toward him. Why didn't you tell me? Kendrick looked wrecked. I tried. HR told me not to create liability on paper. Victor went white. That's not our policy. Danny's phone buzzed. She frowned. This probably matters, she said. An email just came to the family list from HR, accident report, time-stamped, forwarded by... Oh, she looked at Dad. From you. You wrote handle verbally, no paper trail. Silas swore. Mom covered her mouth. Victor stared like he'd seen a ghost wearing a suit that looked like his father. Dad didn't flinch. Sometimes you solve problems with wisdom, not forms. I stared at the ceiling for one breath. Then I looked back at him. Sometimes paper keeps people alive because paper makes denial expensive. Ria closed her binder. I'm shutting line 2, she said. Right now. You will not, Dad said. She stood. I will. Fire me if you want. I'm not losing anyone this winter. The room shifted. Kendrick straightened as if her spine lent his a map. I'll draft the notice, he said. We can tag the line within the hour. Silas looked at Dad. We can't eat the downtime. Victor unexpectedly shook his head. We can't eat dead people either, he said hoarsely. We all went quiet. Even the HVAC seemed to listen. Dad spread his hands. Mediation mode. Fine. Temporary pause, minimal scope. We're not making a press circus of this. I nodded. Good. Next item. Danny raised her hand like we were still at Thanksgiving and she wanted more potatoes. I found something, she said. After your post blew up, a guy DM'd me. He used to work here. He said the interlocks were bypassed with a magnet and a prayer. He sent pictures. Ria swore under her breath. I knew it. Can we see? I asked. Danny set her phone on the table. Photos filled the screen. A cheap magnet taped under a guard. A lockout tag cut and tucked into a drawer. A text thread: do it or lose your weekend shifts. Kendrick closed his eyes. Dixon, he said again, the name like gravel. Dad kept his voice even. We don't adjudicate hearsay in a family meeting. We don't ignore evidence because we don't like where it points, I said. Silas rubbed his forehead. Let Rhea handle Dixon, he muttered. He's been a problem since you promoted him, Rhea said flatly. He blinked. He pulls numbers. By cutting corners, she said. Which is how you get numbers until you get funerals. Mom's pen tore a groove in her notepad. She looked up. It was the face she wore when I was little and fell off my bike, and she saw the blood before I felt it. Not panic. Assessment. What else do you know, she asked, not to challenge, to understand. I clicked to a new slide. Your insurance premiums are going up, I said. Renewal quote jumps 22%. Underwriter notes mention loss control concerns. Hensley's term sheet requires you to keep premiums within 5% of last year. If your safety record worsens, you default on the term sheet even before the volume clause bites. That's the trap. Victor whispered something I couldn't hear. It sounded like a prayer. Dad exhaled hard. What do you propose, genius? Kill the Hensley deal, I said. Fix your house, tell the truth. Then decide what growth looks like. He scoffed. If we tell the truth, vultures descend. Or neighbors offer help, I said. You taught me the town looks out for its own. Let it. He shook his head. That was when loyalty meant something. It still does, I said. But loyalty isn't obedience, it's care with a backbone. Silence, then, the kind that rearranges a room. Rhea took the moment. Walk the floor with me, she said. Now, see it yourself. Dad hesitated. He hated walking the floor when a mess might touch his shoes. But the room watched and he knew it. Fine, he said curtly. 10 minutes. We moved as a group. Boots by the door, safety glasses. The plant welcomed us with heat and metal and the sweet, sharp scent of cutting oil. Sparks hissed in a distant bay. Forklifts murmured like big insects, the rhythm of a place that makes real things with hands and time. Rhea's voice cut through the noise. Line 2, she said, and led us to a row of machines that looked proud and tired. She pointed to a motor housing. Feel, she told me. I didn't touch it. I hovered my palm an inch away. Heat reached for me like an animal wanting out. Too hot, I said. Too hot, she agreed. She tapped a sensor. Dust masked its face. Reads 40 degrees lower than reality. Because it's dirty. Or because someone likes what dirty means. We moved to station. I watched workers glance up and then return to their tasks. Some met my eyes. Some looked through me. All of them carried a map in their muscle memory that I wanted to honor. At the last station, a welder lifted his shield. Mateo, his name tag said. 40-something. The set of his mouth said he'd learned to choose his words. He looked at Rhea, then at me, then at the glass-walled conference room where we'd argued. Your software saved my cousin last summer, he said to me loud enough for the line to hear. He's a lineman in Texas. Saw your logo on the alert. He got down. He's got 3 kids. Gracias. It hit like a clean guitar note through the smoke. The line went quieter, as if listening to a new beat. Dad's eyes flicked to me and away. He hadn't accounted for gratitude entering the factory like that. It doesn't fit on a spreadsheet. Mateo reached into his pocket and handed me a thumb drive, small and scuffed. Don't say who, he murmured. Logs. I copy when I can. If you can use them to fix this, do it. I closed my fingers around the metal. I'll protect you, I said. He shrugged. Protect Rhea. She protects us. Rhea gave him a look that said more than thank you. Then she turned to me. You wanted the truth, she said. There it is. We stepped back into the chill of the corridor. My phone buzzed. Calla, you okay? Better on the floor than at the table, I wrote. Heat hurts, but it's honest. Calla, I can run quick pattern checks on those logs if you shoot them over. Later I typed, I want to look with my own eyes first. We regrouped in the lobby. Dad checked his watch. Victor stared at his shoes. Silas watched the trucks at the loading dock with a look that finally resembled responsibility. Max barreled in from school, then Cheek's pink backpack unzipped. The innocent blessedly on time. Aunt Juno, he panted. Science fair update. Hit me, I said, grateful for his light. He pulled a small device from his bag. I built a phone case thermal camera, he said, proud. It's janky, but it works. You can see heat pads on the football field and stuff. Want to try it? I smiled. You're hired, I said, and clipped it onto my phone. The screen shimmered into false color. Blue where cold lived. Yellow warming. Angry red where heat gathered. I pointed it at line 2 through the window. A streak glowed too bright, too long. A vein of risk running under metal skin. Whoa, Max breathed. It's like a volcano. Rhea leaned in. That's Station 9, she said. Bearing housing. Silas came close, curiosity pulling him past pride. Is it supposed to look like that? No, Rhea and I said together. Dad stood back, arms crossed. Gadgets, he muttered, but softer than before. We watched the angry red pulse. The camera whined as Max's code tried to keep up. My stomach dropped with a certainty I couldn't explain. I checked the time. Nearly 4. Shift change soon. The hour when minds wander and hands follow habit. The hour bad choices turn to headlines. Shut it down, I said. Rhea didn't argue. She picked up the phone at the security desk and called the floor. Kill 9, she barked. Now. Across the glass, a worker reached for a button, then froze. He looked left. Dixon. No one had to say his name. He shook his head, and the worker pulled back. Rhea slammed the phone down and moved fast. Boots hit concrete. Metal screamed. Heat hung wrong in the air. Dixon, she shouted, kill that line or I kill your career. He smirked. We hit quota or lose the bonus. You want to explain that, Ba? The word boss dripped like an insult. I watched Max's thermal feed flare red, now I said. Rhea slammed the emergency stop. The line hissed dead. For a heartbeat, silence held until a bearing popped, coughing smoke. The floor froze. Even Dixon shrank. No one died. Not that second. But I knew then change was no longer optional. I turned to Dad. We do this my way, or I walk and I won't walk alone. He said nothing. The siren howled. Rhea barked orders. People moved. Smoke thinned. The line went still as a chapel. Dad finally met my eyes. Not apology, but no denial. Tomorrow at 9, I said. We sign the shutdown. We tell the truth. His jaw clenched. Then he nodded. Tomorrow the reckoning came, and it had teeth.